Good evening to all. We have an expert research person today, Professor Goba Samanda.
Lakshana, we can't hear you.
Goba Samanda works.
Lakshana, we cannot hear you. I think your voice is breaking.
Maybe
Hello,
hard
sir.
network. Yeah.
Can you do it again, or can you ask Nisha to do it?
Sir, my end is a network issue.
Okay. Just do it
Good
again then.
evening.
Right.
Okay, sir. Good evening to all. We have an expert research person today, Professor Goba Samanda. Goba Samanda works as the professor at the Department of Geography, University of Burdwan. She was also in additional charge of director, UGC HRDC, the University of Burdwan in 2019-20. Her research interests cut across the field of urban, gender, and water. She has carried out research in Eastern India with interdisciplinary methodologies and a collaborative research team under the financial assistance from different national and international institutions such as ICSSR, Ford Foundation, World Bank, Australia India Institute, and INR France, IRD France. As a geographer, she has a passion for undertaking in-depth and field-based research. She acted as the gender chair of the Paris Sorbonne University, France in 2016. She was visiting fellow at Paris Diderot University, France, Australian National University, Australia, and French Institute of Pondicherry, India. Her co-authored book, Dancing with the River, People and Life on the Shores of South Asia, has been published from Yale University Press. Her forthcoming book from Springer Local Governance series is Negotiating Local Terrain in Urban Governance, Freedom and Functioning of Women Councillors in India. She has contributed immensely through publishing journal articles and book chapters. She acts as peer reviewer of articles in academically acclaimed journals. She is dedicated to disseminate the knowledge of social science in general and geography in particular beyond the classroom and academic community. To reach the wider audience, she contributes highly to popular writing in Bengali, the provincial language, through news articles and other popular magazine articles. She is passionate in mentoring PhD students coming from peripheral locations. So we can sum up that we are getting an esteemed and honorable guest in front of us. So let me call upon Professor Goba Samanda ma'am to start the session. Please, ma'am.
Thank you for introduction. And thank you, Govinda Kuti, for inviting me to interact with your students, both UG and PG. And I'm really happy to talk to your students especially, and also maybe other faculties who are present in this webinar. So I have a few slides, but I think I try to share my screen. Okay. Share.
I hope it is active. So that
you can see my
it is
screen?
coming.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's coming. Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. So as the title, you already know that I'm going to talk about. So that title, I have hired a few words from Robert Frost, and the poem is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. I'm sure some of you have read that poem. It's a nice one. Especially we liked it very much when we were young and a part of our English literature syllabus. So I have hired that terms to incorporate here And this is my feeling, and feeling to be in the field of geography, in teaching, in research, and in interacting with many people. I, I feel that gender blind to gender neutral, that is the journey, and it's a really, really long journey we have. And that's why I thought that maybe these words may fit here very well. So, so before heading into what we are opting here to talk about, because of the student participant, I think we should at least talk about the terms I have used in the title. It's gender blindness. So gender blindness is actually, it's a practice when we don't think that gender is a factor. And factor of what? Factor of society, factor of cultural issues, factor of economy, factor of anything we talk about, even within geography as such, but I'll be getting into that afterwards. And gender blindness is quite harmful in practice because, you know, it aggravates gender inequalities as it ignores the differences which we have created over a long, long time of history. And there are different context, anecdotes, and behind these differences we have created. And when we try to ignore that, no, there is not much differences based on gender, that we prefer to call a gender blindness. But in reality, actually, there are a lot of differences. And I know that it's not that all of us, we need to read a lot of things from the books written on gender, but it's an everyday practice of all of us who are living our lives in different parts of India. And we come across these issues on a daily basis. So we know that gender matters a lot. And when we try to not to acknowledge, that is called basically a gender blindness. And so it is basically when we try to refuse that gender is not a significant factor, gender doesn't have any role to control our lives, gender has nothing to do with the space and spatiality, which we geographers are very much interested in. So my take here would be to highlight how this gender blindness is rooted in the discourse of teaching and researching geography in Indian universities, because I never try to look at other countries and other departments in other universities. I'm trying to look at in Indian universities and fitting into the geography department and through the curriculum itself. So here, what we are going to talk about, that gender, the idea that gender is not a significant factor in the production of space and spatial activities, which we claim as the center of geography discourse, that is gender blindness. So here from we start. And so when I have used two terms, one is gender blind and another is gender neutral. These are again, there is something in between which I did not incorporate into the title, but that is also very, very significantly important. Gender sensitive, which means that earlier we have seen that gender blind is acknowledging the differences based on gender. Then first we have to be sensitive and we accept that there are differences, and those differences are created, transformed, taking new shapes with the change over time in every space, micro or macro, national or local or international, whatever we are talking about here. So sensitiveness is here gender sensitive. We use the term that which belong to the middle of gender neutral at one part and gender blindness in another. So it is basically when we accept that yes, gender division exists and the disparity in gender equality, it was in the history and we cannot claim that it is gone. It is still there, and it affected the lives of women in different parts of the world throughout historical period, and it is also affecting today's lives. And for that record, I to make an argument stronger that still we have a lot of gender inequality in within our country. Especially we have recently have got the report. Actually, UNDP publishes gender uh, inequality index every year. And for 2019 and 2020, India's rank was 112 in among maybe 150 or 156 countries. So we were far away from one. Our position was 112. That means how come that we can ignore that gender inequality doesn't exist? If the data is saying at the international scale that we hold, this country holds a rank 112 among 150 countries or 156 countries, then we cannot deny this. And on top of that, what I'm going to tell you here, that recently we have got the 2021 report again this year. And this year, during the pandemic, this inequality based on gender only has been affected so much that we slipped 40 ranks. So from 112, now we are 152. And we slipped far behind 40 ranks. Can you imagine? And during this pandemic. So it has become possible because we were already in a bad shape. We were holding a rank which was 112 and we slipped during the pandemic. So if we try to think about, people are talking about pandemic so much, how can we ignore? But when we think about the impact of pandemic, how can we ignore that gender inequality and how can we be gender blind? It's not possible for us. So my argument would be to be gender sensitive, and not only it is required for the development policies and policy makers, we need to understand these kinds of inequalities, and we have to gender sensitive within academia and each and every discipline. As I am trained and I'm working with the geography department, so I'll be talking from my own perspective. So in gender sensitivity, actually what we do, we're taking into account the impact of development on men, women, boys and girls. It is impacting differently. And we try to understand first. If we do not try to understand the reason and where the fault lines are, then how can we try to think about mitigating that problem? Then there are, because of this, we have lots of inequalities which are being created, and we have to address those. We have to accept and we have to address those negative consequences, understand first, and then we try to think about how we are going to mitigate. So basically, if we think about from the policy orientation, then gender blind policies actually which do not distinguish the targets, that they think that one policy they take up and they think that it will work equally for men and women, which doesn't happen in reality. And often they are not gender neutral. You know, even when we think about gender neutrality, that means when we address already existing inequalities, then only we can think about gender neutrality. And there is a lot of confusion among us, especially among geographers. We think geography is gender neutral. But my claim here is no, geography is not gender neutral. Rather, geography as a discipline is gender blind. Then if we think about gender neutral positions, actually it is a kind of movement. Gender neutral actually is a movement. Probably you know that earlier we always used to say that, think about it is about language. And I was reading in a newspaper that Kerala government is taking a step to change the language to make it more gender neutral. I'm not sure about it. I have read it in the newspaper. Maybe you know. So language matters a lot. That spoken languages are very much part of, and not only spoken language is also written language. So when we do not look into the gender differences, we just erase and we become gender blind. And we think that that is gender neutrality. So there are a lot of confusion between these two terms. That's why I prefer to build my argument on the basis of these two terms. And this is in order to avoid discrimination. You know, gender neutrality is when we do not discriminate. What kind of discrimination we do? We are doing a lot of discrimination on everyday practice everywhere in India in different forms. So we have to stop that discrimination. Even in language, think about geography. Recently, the pattern had changed. But when I was a student, I used to read that geography is a subject which deals with man and environment relationship. And when I was a student, I used to think, come on, how come that it can be between the man and environment, then where women will go? So that was, nowadays, if you look at the geography textbooks, then you will see that there is a difference. And it is, this language is becoming, slowly, it is becoming gender neutral because we use the human environment. Do not use the man environment. If we use the man environment, then definitely we exclude all women, half of the population, from the discourse of space and spatiality. So that when we talk about gender neutrality, then we think that we should not create further discriminatory practices either in the language or within the social institution or the social structure where we disaggregate these gender roles which are fixed, and we cannot cross the boundaries and we cannot negotiate. These are the things which is a sign of gender neutrality, that we do not further aggravate the problem. Rather, we were gender blind, so we become gender sensitive. And then only when we become gender sensitive, then we can think about. So if we don't think about geography and if we think about other practices, like, these days, earlier it was like, women writer, women poet, and women director, and there were a lot of these were in common practice. But nowadays we are not using, like in Bengali, we have always a different shikshak is for teacher, male teacher, and shikshika, which is a female teacher. So we call it a teacher, and male teacher, female teacher. So these I'm pretty sure that in each and every language, definitely in Malayali language also, there are some differences, and probably that is being addressed in Kerala at this moment. I'm not very sure about it. And then and there has been emphasis on utilizing inclusive language and advocating for inequality. But when we talk about geography, more than that, the language, we have to think about the practice. How do we practice? How do we build our knowledge? And when we build our knowledge, there is a language, because there is a written language. Language is not only a spoken one. But there is a written language. We write a lot. We write research papers. We do research. We write textbooks. So everywhere we have to be a little careful, gender sensitive, and then we can think about gender neutrality. Otherwise, straight away, there is no straight cut bridge between gender neutral, gender blind, and gender neutral. So we have to be, first step is the gender sensitivity, and then we can head to gender neutrality. And we should not confuse between these two, what we do often. So as this is for the students, because feminist geography is also a philosophy or approach in geography which developed along with others like radical, Marxist, welfare, postmodern, post-structural, etc., etc. It is also a particular philosophy and which that was the focus. So feminist geography's agenda was, okay, come on, look at the situation and think about it. When you think about space, when you think about spatiality, when you think about interaction between human and environment, then do think about men and women separately. Look at the gender. When you are dealing with a lot of data, try to look at the gender disaggregated data. So that was the call for, and it emerged in 1970s. It was a call, the call for including women both as producer and subjects of academic work. Here, two terms are significantly important. Producer. Producer here is not a producer like farmer or industrial worker. Here the producer, we mean the knowledge producer. So here there was a call from the feminist geographers or feminist ideology within geography that women should be included both as producer, like they are producing. So unless and until they become the faculty, they hold the faculty position, they can never be the producer of knowledge. At least they have to enrolled as a PhD student. Then they can take the position of a producer of knowledge. There we need more women. And also the subject, what we teach, what is included in our syllabus. And there lies a big problem. So my interest here, I cannot cover so many things in one lecture. So I'm not looking at the producer level of how gender neutrality, gender blindness, or lack of gender sensitivity works at the producer level. I'm not looking at it because I'm not talking about research, feminist research, so to say. Rather, I'm focusing more on teaching side. So I'll be focusing more on the subject of teaching, as followed by, there are two words you can see, that producer and subjects of academic work. I'll be focusing more on subject of teaching. And let's see what happened after 5 decades of feminist geography, the philosophy which was introduced into the domain of geography. So we have already 5 decades, and let's see what happened. Here is a big story. With the help of one of my ex-student, Mrinmoy Chatterjee. Mrinmoy, if you are here, you can just put your video on for maybe 1 second so that people can see you. Yeah, here is Mrinmoy. Mrinmoy has worked hard with me for last 7 days to find with a, like magnifying glass. We were working hard to find where gender is there within the syllabus. Thank you, Mrinmoy. You can put your video on. So I was working, and when I was looking at this this situation, I was trying to understand. I selected 15 universities of India, and where geography departments are really well known. you can see that I have started with Jawaharlal Nehru University, then University of Delhi, Banaras Hindu University, University of Calcutta, University of Madras, University of Jaipur, University of Mumbai. Of course, I didn't leave my own university. So University of Bardwan is there. And Pune University, Presidency University, which is newer one. So that's why we wanted to look at. Punjab University, Chandigarh, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, and Guwahati University, Assam. Bharati Darshan University, Tiruchirappalli, Himachal Pradesh University, Simla. So I selected the universities, and I was thinking, okay, fine, we have to think about which are very, very significantly important department within India. So I may miss out some other, so you can correct me that, madam, you could look into this one. I'll be happy to hear from you if I have missed some other universities. And I was trying to cover almost all over India. But you know, I also asked Govindan Kutty for his syllabus for UG and PG, and there was also not much, so I didn't include that here. So basically, I was trying to look at the premier geography departments of this country, and I was trying to look at where this gender is addressed in. So starting from, if you see that I have given here the full credit, my total credit of each and every department, and then with a magnifying glass or microscope, we were trying to find out, and you know, we were having a lot of call. Okay, Ramrin might tell me it was 1.33 allotted for 5 things. Then I spent the whole day to calculate this table, to calculate the credit before up to half an hour before this lecture. So it was a really difficult task to find them. But what I'm trying to tell you, that part first I'll be looking at the main course, because I'm not taking the optional. I'm reluctant to give optional too much importance, because optional is not taken by all the students. It is for a limited number of people. So that's why I started looking at the main course, which we call core course. And in most cases, it is, in fact, JNU syllabus curriculum is problematic. As you know, that JNU has the title of the courses where gender is not there anywhere. And we could not find the details, because probably they opt their course every year. So they don't have a fixed kind of syllabus like we have for our own universities. So I just called Shucharita Sen. Shucharita is a good friend of mine, and she is one of the gender expert in India among geographers. And Shucharita told me that yes, that we have, but it is part of social geography, and credit maybe 1 to 1.5. So I didn't find it in the syllabus, so that's why I had to ask her. And there was a full course before, because you know that one of the eminent gender geographer of India, Professor Saraswati Raju, used to teach there, and a full course, 4 credit, but Raju retired, so gender also retired from JNU for certain period of time. Maybe it will come back afterwards. University of Delhi, they just have 1 credit allotted within the geography of philosophy, and out of that there are 6 points. So I have put the credit like out of 90, they have 1/6 allotted for feminist, and feminist geography is the philosophy. And how come you can teach curriculum on critical geography and you can leave feminist geography? Not possible. So feminist geography, in most cases, other than 2-3 universities, in most cases it is there within the philosophy of geography, which we call thought sometimes. So but Benares, but our extreme, you know, we were wondering and we were trying hard to find, but Benares even They don't have anything written feminist geography. I don't know, maybe it is touched upon, because what I'm claiming here, it is based on what was available, what was written in their syllabus. Maybe somebody is taking up something and taking it forward, and they are trying to understand the gender question in their class, but that we cannot capture. So I didn't find anything written on gender or feminist geography or something like that in BHU syllabus, which we could download from their website. University of Calcutta, it's much better. Like, you know, I that means when I have given for like, you know, credit like 0.62 or 0.31 and 0.05 and 0.08, that means these are part of maybe 4 optionals under those four courses, and 4 core courses. There may be some units, and under those units there are something, and within that there is a gender. So that's how we try to calculate these things. But it is good to see that at least gender shows up in other core courses. Even the credit is very low, but they show up. So that's very important here for Calcutta University. Other than feminist geography, they are also teaching somewhere. University of Madras has orientation more science and applied kind of stuff. They don't have anything on this. And University of Jaipur, it was very difficult to calculate. It is within the geography of difference and exclusion. Then we were literally tired of calculating, cross-checking, Rinmoy and me. Finally, we could say that it is less than 0.01%, less than 0.01 credit. And then University of Mumbai, it has 1 full credit for gender and geography, which is pretty good within the main course. University of Bardwan, we have gender geography, like it's part of our philosophy of geography, and in development we have some small units which comes to 0.25. Then Pune University, they have geography of gender, which is part of again the philosophy, and here is the credit. Then they have something like gender and economic inequality, which is probably under development or something, and it has 0.37 credit. And Presidency University, they have geography of gender. And just the main course, they have really limited 0.4. And then Punjab University, they have feminism and post-feminism in geography, which is part of again the philosophy, but it is 1/3 of a credit. So it's not even 1 credit. And then Hill University, it is gender question, it is even 1/10, and like, you know, 1/10 of 1 credit. And Guwahati University, they have 1/5. And then Bharati Darshan University, they have 1/8 in philosophy, and then under development they have 1/5. So Himachal Pradesh University is very difficult. We didn't find anything, but they are still not in credit system probably, or maybe it is not uploaded the new syllabus. We don't know. What we could download, that is 1600, that is marks, not the credit. And we didn't find anything written in the syllabus as gender or feminism. Now, if we look at this optional one, so optional is relatively better for us. And we see that at Jawaharlal University, JNU, we didn't find anything in course detail, so we could not calculate. University Delhi is better in optional because they have 4 full course on gender, because there is, I think, Anindita is there, Aparajita is there, and many other fellows probably they are teaching gender as course, full course. So they have 4 full course. And also in other 3 courses, optional courses, they have 1/5 or 1/6 kind of credit for those. And then University of Calcutta, within this optional, they have 0.31 and 0.62 as credit. And then University of Jaipur is 0.33. I think the University of Jaipur is having a special paper on crime, and under that they have something on gender, domestic violence, etc., etc. University of Mumbai, this university, this geography department has a couple of six is a full credit one paper, and then in one paper it's 1.5 credit, then another optional it is 1.5 credit, then another one it is 0.75, 0.37, 37 and 37. So in most of the optional papers they have a little touch of gender. And in also the main course they have one full credit at least. And University of Baran, we don't have anything in optional. And then Pune University, yes, they have 1/10 in some of the optional paper. We could not accommodate here in this slide, so it's difficult to say, but we can, when we write something out of it, we probably can build those in. And Presidency University, they have one even third of one credit and 1/3 of single credit and 1/5 in two optionals, and so this goes on and on. So now probably it's what I was trying to tell you at the beginning, that gender blindness is so rooted in our discipline that we never felt. I won't claim that it is a deliberate decision of us geographers, but we never thought of that geography can, the gender can be incorporated within the main courses. Actually, when people, you see that the optional, there are more credits, and some of the universities, they have full paper, optional paper. So I'm sure, pretty sure that there are people who were interested in opting gender as a course, but they couldn't make much headway to incorporate this within the main course itself. So they opted for an optional course. And probably I also could opt for an optional course on gender geography, but I never tried, because I was always during my course of stay in this university, I always try to accommodate more and more within the main course. And I start with a lot of things to incorporate, but after a lot of struggle, I could not make much headway. And I'm just one funny thing I want to share with you, that it's not a serious tone. One of my colleagues, he always tells me that you are a danger geographer. So it's not on a serious tone, but I don't know, maybe it's if we think that gender is not an important significant factor within the geography curriculum and the subject and the things to research. And so that is my position, to clear to you that I never opted for a gender course which is optional. I always fight for inclusion in the main course or core course, where everybody will be participating in those courses. So that was one of my objectives. And for doing that, I always also insist my PhD students that whatever you are doing in your own research, whatever topic you are looking at, try to look at and bring one chapter, include one chapter on from a gender lens. Try to understand from a gender lens that how you can bring in within that, like I can give you two examples which I can remember at this moment. One of my PhD students, she has worked on the water, socio-political complexity of water, and she used this political ecology framework to understand, and she brought one full chapter on how gender works when we talk about water in cities. And another PhD student who was working on commuting, an experience of commuting, and and she accommodated one full chapter to understand how gender works when we think about commuters. You know, commuters is again a gender neutral. Commuter, when we use the term, it's like, you know, think we about this commuter, it's okay, it's a gender neutral position, but it is not. Rather, when we tried to understand from a gender lens, we saw that no, we were gender neutral, gender blind when we were using the term that commuter. So that is my stake to clear to you. I always try to find that, yes, we have a lot of things which we can include within the geography and definitely within the main course. Otherwise, if we think about it, incorporating this as an optional course, then we have a very, you know, niche group of students which whom we can reach out. So my position is for making an argument, and I would try to make a stronger argument for incorporating gender in the main course, and in the next section I'll be talking how is it possible that we can accommodate. And I hope that if geography faculties are participating in this course, so probably I would definitely I'm expecting feedback from them, and probably will be happy to hear from them what is their take on this. So if we try to think after this microscopic presence of gender in the main course of curriculum of different universities, if we try to think that why this exclusion, it's a really big question, and I do not have an easy answer, but I try my best as I understood. But you know, all of us, we have a particular way of looking at things. So maybe I won't claim that I don't have any subjectivity when I talk about this. I might have a subjective perspective of being a woman, being within geography for so long time, being in teaching and being part of the building the curriculum of the subject. So maybe I have a very subjective position, and I don't deny that position. So maybe I'm open to get your comments and feedback on this. So I'm not trying to answer all the question, but what I think that I do not claim that exclusion is deliberate, because you know, geography departments are full of male faculties, and that's why it was a deliberate effort not to include geography. No, I don't claim that, and I don't take that side of argument. Rather, what I feel that we have in common among the faculties who are engaged in developing the curriculum, we are a little bit of gender blind. You know, we do not think that gender should be incorporated, and probably it was not very clear to us why do we need to incorporate gender. When we talk about geomorphology, when we talk about transport geography, when we talk about tourism, when we talk about economic geography, when we talk about development, why everywhere we will include gender? That is my take to think, to get you think over it. And if I succeed a little bit, I'll be more than happy. And I hope that I'll be able to convince you a little bit that yes, we need to incorporate. And I'll tell you how we can incorporate. So in teaching, we have, of course, we have gender blindness. And in research, we have two problems. We think, why gender question is so important for understanding or creating new knowledge in geography? It's not that relevant, you know. So that is one perspective of not opening or not being open enough to imbibe gender question within research. And another big problem is the methodology. So we will discuss a little bit on research, but my main focus would be on teaching and curriculum, especially how this gender blindness is becoming so strong, and it has been so strong within the geography curriculum that we never thought even that this is important and we should think about it, how can we incorporate. So here are some kind of certain kinds of clues which I would try to tell you a little bit about. that how we can include gender within main or core courses of geography syllabus to be gender sensitive than being gender blind. First of all, we think unnecessary. It's not really necessary when you think about. I have already, you can see the long list where I will try to touch upon. There is a long list of branches of geography. Some of those are also opted as optional, but I'm trying to look at more not on the optional, but more from the perspective of a main course or core course. So actually there is a blindness, and from there we have to develop a little sensitivity, and then we can include an dissection or inclusion and dissection. Before, if we do not dissect, if we do not desegregate, then how we can be sensitive? When we desegregate and dissect, then probably we can think about, okay, yes, there is a point, we should include gender lens. When we try to talk about space and we try to talk about spatiality, when we think about it's the human environment relationship which we are trying to look at within geography, and how come we can be gender blind and we can treat human as gender neutral. Yes, in language it is a gender neutral position, but we cannot take it for granted that this is the gender neutrality we can practice. So I will start from applied geomorphology, because if we are talking about really actually physical geography of we are trying to understand how river system works, or how glacier works, or what are the landforms like erosional, the way, the traditional way we try to look at the geomorphology, we think about the slope and then the physical activity of different forms of geomorphological processes we think about. I do not think that we can think about incorporating gender there, but if we think about applied geomorphology, then there are a lot of scope that we can open our eyes and we can think about incorporating. Because when you think about applied geomorphology, then in most cases we think about the fluvial processes, and say for example we are thinking about flood and riverbank erosion under geomorphology, applied geography. Or we can think about the coastal erosion, or maybe the salinization of coastal areas, which we are trying to think about in geomorphology. And also probably we are thinking about how glaciers are being retreated, and this how these retreat of glaciers are going to impact the on the lives and livelihoods of the communities who are living in the mountainous areas. So there is immense scope that we try to understand, that these kinds of applied aspects of geomorphology, when you think about impact of anything within applied geography, geomorphology, then we cannot escape the gender lens. Because flood and riverbank erosion, when it happens, then the impact of flood on the households, it's not all same to men and women. No immediate arrangement after a flood, or say for example in recent time our Sundarbans areas are experiencing a lot of cyclones almost every year. Similarly Orissa and Andhra sometimes, so Bangladesh. So when flood and cyclone and other kinds of disasters, which you call disaster is also part of applied geography syllabus. If you look at the syllabus, you will find it. Disaster is there everywhere within applied geomorphology. Then if we think about that disaster and other kind of processes of which usually have a very high impact on the life and livelihoods of the people, then it is not at all, it impacts similar ways, and it impacts similarly on men and women, because women are the main or key person of running the household. They have the responsibility of arranging the water When there is a flood, even drinking water, they have to arrange the food for the all family members. And if there is a collapse of the household house structure of the house on the river bank, then again they are under certain kind of open shelter. Then experience of everyday lives is not same for men and women. So probably when we think about flood and disasters, or maybe glacial retreat, or maybe coastal erosion or salinization process, which is part of the geomorphological applied geomorphology, we better try to use a gender lens to identify how the experiences or impacts of these phenomena are not same on men and women. And in most cases, what happens that men, after these calamities and after these all disasters, so after losing everything they have in their possession, the men usually move out, migrate somewhere for earning some money, and then women, they have to run the household with elderly people, with children, their education, health, etc., everything. So when a man moves out of a household, then the whole burden of running household comes to the women. Think about this pandemic period when millions of people were locked in different cities of India. They were men and women with their children and their elderly people. They were at their home in different parts of rural India, and they had no means for money, work, anything. So I don't see that the impact of any kind of disaster or the things we discuss within the applied geomorphology is not same. We better open our eyes. We can think about how it impacts differently, at least a small token part of the syllabus, that how gendered impacts of disaster or flood or whatever. So we can, if we think that it is necessary, then definitely we can. Then coming to the agricultural geography, if you look at the syllabus of agricultural geography, you will see that lots of things are there, agricultural economy, agricultural inputs, agricultural profitability, cropping index, so many index even we calculate and things, and we always try to show the spatiality so that we can show maps where the productive copy intensity or productivity index is high, where it is low. So we are so engrossed with the macro scale that we do not find, we usually ignore how this, these days we are talking about so many things, but we do not look at the gender disaggregated data from the census, that who are the cultivators. And you will see that even within the census data, you will find that cultivators are mainly men. Cultivators means the people who are holding land, owner of land, they are called cultivators by census. So that is more men. And when you, everywhere around India, if you see that the percentage of workers engaged in agricultural labor force, you will see there are more women. So how can I think of agricultural geography excluding so many women who are working as agricultural laborer in the field? And even if we do, what we do not calculate, that immense feminization of agriculture is happening in all over India. Northeastern region, it was always feminized agricultural, hilly areas always feminized agriculture, but even in the plain areas where there is a the size of the land is small, then the land is cannot produce enough for survival of the household. Then always men move out somewhere to do some work, and the farming system is run by women. So there is absolutely a perfect positive correlation between the negative correlation between the size of the farm and the percentage of women who are carrying out. So as there is a smaller size of the farm, there would be more women. So why don't you think about that feminization of agriculture can be included within the agricultural geography? But you might have a different opinion. I'm just suggesting from my own perception and my subjective experience and whatever little knowledge I have in the field. So maybe next, if we think about industrial geography, you think about it. Industrial geography, it is not much in the curriculum of different geography departments, but it was. And when you think about industry, we always think about big industrial houses, and we think that they're all men. But if we look at the industrial production of today's India, that is more within this MSME, which we call micro, small, and medium enterprises. And these MSMEs are highly informal recruiter. They recruit people who are mostly informal workers. And if you look at those inside those MSME, which are more in southern India, like, textile industry in Tirupur, or tannery somewhere, or anything, any kind of MSME workers, then more than 90% of the workers are women. Then how can we think about industrial geography or economic geography or productive spaces and spaces of production, industrial production? How can we exclude women? Because most of the informal economy and activities, if we think about it's an economic geography rather industrial geography, maybe we can change it as industrial geography is not in much of the curriculum of different departments. So maybe it's an economic geography. And how can we think about that we can exclude from the economic sphere of spaces where which is highly informalized and there are more women than men. So, and think about resources. I'm sure that resources, this section is there in syllabus of each and every department of India. And resource, we think that resource, yes, geography is, geography resource itself is very much a part of geography curriculum. And think about what do we talk about within those resources. We think about minerals or mining, we think about water, and we think about forest. There may be others, I'm not touching upon all, but what I'm trying here, I'm trying to make you understand that if we try to think through the syllabus and curriculum, and if we are open enough, we will find that everywhere we can bring in gender sensitiveness than being gender blind. So, and if we think about minerals, like mining, as long as the idea of mining was big technology oriented mining, and still it is, wherever it is highly technology oriented mining, then it is all men workers. But if you think about artisanal mining, and then you will see whenever there is a scale is small, there are more women. Because women are always, it's just a joke, women are always happy with little things, So all micro enterprises, micro things, and small production or informal production, there are more women. So if you know Kuntala Lahari Dutt, who used to be a geographer from our university, University of Burdwan, and she is at the moment in Australian National University. She is one of the pioneer geographers who tried to make it visible that no, mining is not a space for men, and there are a lot of artisanal mining, and there are millions of women miners, which we were gender blind, so we never wanted to see them. So now she is throughout his maybe throughout last 20 years or so, she is trying her best to make it visible that mining is not men only business. There are lots of women, and unless and until, and I will tell you that where the problem lies, because the lack of visibility. Unless you do a lot of research on this, you cannot establish the fact that there are women. Because informal sector, look at this informal sector, we have no database, we don't know who is working where. We don't have, in this digital world we can connect Aadhaar card with everything, and we do not have any information that how many workers, informal workers, and are working in different MSMEs, and what is the proportion of men and women there. We don't have ready data unless and until you do a lot of research. So that's how it becomes really problematic for us to understand. Forest similarly, and also water as well. So when we think about forest, we think about the collection of forest. Uh, Sorry, resume slide. So yeah, I think you can see the slide. Is it okay? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am, it is okay as such.
Okay. So it was giving me an indication that I have to resume slide, so that's why I asked. So
You haven't
forest
put it on
again,
slideshow, but it is visible
it
as of now. You can just browse
is
down
not in
for
a
that.
slide. So okay, then maybe I have to resume slide, so something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you can, but
Okay.
all right.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Here we are. So here we were like forest. So when you think about forest again, then if we think about tribal or indigenous group of people who are living within forest and who are living out of the forest resources, you will see there are lots of women who are dealing with every day fodder collection, fuel collection, and collection of food, and which we call forest product. And in case they are, most of them are women who are engaged in those work. But when we think about forest, we do not see them clearly. Similarly, water. When we think about water, we think about big irrigation project, or we think about drinking water, or whatever it is. So whenever we are thinking about household water, it is always managed by women, and especially among poorer households, that water becomes so significant aspect of life that we have no idea how water becomes so important in the relationship within the household and also within the community. If you can remember, I am not sure about Kerala, but I know that in Bengal, I when I was a kid, I used to live in a village, and I have heard, I have not seen it, but I have heard that before my time there was a practice that if somebody is to be punished by the village people, they used to put a bar on using water within that village. So that those the people of that family, they had to go somewhere a longer distance to collect water even. So water is a very center of power itself, and there are a lot of negotiation, and gender is very much a distinct part of water resources. But when we think about water resources, we never think about incorporating gender dimension within that field. Then coming to transport geography, when we think about transport geography, if we think that when we think about private and public transport, and you know that private transport is might not be so significant for men, but public transport is very significantly important for women, because lots of women, they don't have their private vehicles. So whenever we think about public transport, and we have to think about who uses what kind of transport, who use the road. But we are always interested in understanding road as a mode of connections, and we are more interested in road density, road length, etc., etc. But maybe we need to look at from the, we need to turn our face from looking at road as just simple a road. We have to understand what exactly happens when people move on the road. That's a very important thing. We can if we are open enough, we can think about it. Geography of development, of course, there are a lot of material, a lot of research that development can never be gender blind. In fact, what I would like to tell you that if we found something within the main course, or even in the optional courses, so when we think about geography of inequality, when we think about geography of development, then we think of incorporating gender, but not in other cases. So that we have seen in the when I was investigating into the curriculum. And thinking about social and cultural geography, how we can be gender blind when we are thinking about social and cultural geography? Because the social and cultural geography is very much rooted in the gender relationship. So if we do not address that gender relationship, how the society and cultural issues can be discussed within geography? It's very much, we can never be gender blind when we think about social and cultural geography. Like, in some universities under social geography, there is a touch upon of identity and the gender question also addressed, but not as such within cultural geography, which is very, very significantly important, I think. But I think, when we think about a social system, how can we try to understand social system without understanding the gender question? How can you think about the cultural components? How can you discuss the cultural issues without understanding the gender question? Because these are also very, very significant part of geography syllabus, I think. And then if we think about settlement geography, yes, a lot of rural and urban, and urban must include certain kind of, women in cities, which is a very, very significantly researched topic from different other disciplines, and not only from different others, but by geographers in different parts of the world. And still, when we think about settlement, we think about built up area, we think about land use, land cover, we think about many other issues, but not exactly how a settlement is negotiated, how the structure, how the roads, how the public spaces are negotiated by men and women differently. So if we think about, we think about safety and security. When we think about safety, we always think about women. But when I think about urban planning, we do not think about the safety is an important part of the issue for women, and we should think about how we can make cities more women friendly, so that they can have access to public spaces equally as men do. And then, of course, we talk about a lot for climate change, and climate change is also very, very significantly important. And there are lots of arguments that, climate change is not going to affect men and women. Similarly, it is like all kinds of disaster. Climate change is having is going to have a very disastrous effect on men and women, and it is going to impact going to have more negative impact on women, because women cannot move out quickly from one place to the other. So they have to face the consequences of climate change, whether it is in agriculture, or it is going to be a flood, or it is going to be a change in the temperature condition, which upset the resource base of that particular area. So maybe these are things which I have thought of, but I just would like to request you that that if you try to think more and more, you will find that we can incorporate in many other areas. So in fact, I will end with the problem we are encountering with the gender question within geography. This is, I'm telling this from my personal experience of being engaged in researching gender issues. So we have to encounter a lot of problem when we think about building one research or PhD or a project. For project, we don't have a problem because nobody is going to intervene to what we are going to do the research. But if it is a case of PhD, then definitely it is a departmental affair, and then we have a lot of question to handle, because till now we are too much obsessed with the spatial pattern and quantification of geographic space. We always think about, okay, if we think about gender, then we go inside a house. Then how can we think of spatiality? Because spatiality, we need to map, we need to put a boundary, we have to segregate the field. So these things are real problem, because we know how to handle and how to make feminist agenda as an important aspect of doing a research when we are thinking about geographic space and spatiality. And nowadays it has become more problematic, because if somebody is presenting research, PhD research, and there is no map, then we get a lot of problem that, okay, probably we are putting some problem to the discipline itself, because mapping is one of the important spatial pattern, and these things are more important part of geography. But honestly, to say that that was the regime of 1950s, after that we have so many approaches and philosophies under critical geography, and we have seen that yes, map is important. I'm not saying, I'm not claiming that map is not important. Map is important, but map doesn't mean whether the map is correctly drawn from a perfect projection, or this thing, or maybe the mapping of a village or a neighborhood can be done without so much perfection. But if we think about the perceived map of the people living there, that make more sense to me. Maybe I'm wrong in this respect, but for macro things, yes, we have to go for quantification, and we have to go for GIS mapping as such. But probably these days we have, like Google Earth image, where we can go to a very micro level, and we can detect a very change of very micro level. So maybe we have to rethink how we map and how we prepare the map. And gender component and feminism also need a interdisciplinary approach, and it is more dependent on qualitative methods in particular, because if we go with a questionnaire, structured questionnaire in our hand, what I feel that there is also a power structure which plays its role. Like, I am a researcher, I have knowledge with me, I want the answers of my question, and you are, we use a term sample, which really are very derogatory for research participant. And we think that they have to answer. So if we have a structured questionnaire in our hand, then it is always a power relations, and we are not open enough to understand the experienced knowledge of the research participants, which sometimes might be more important than our understanding from reading the text. So there are a lot of issues around it, and for methodological issues, it is whether what is the philosophy we are following, and then study area. You are working in one single village or one community. How come it can be a geographic research? It looks like research of anthropology or something like that. So we have problem of study area, which and we have a lot of problem with sample size, because we try to think that if sample size is less, how can we generalize things? But that generalization is under a severe question these days, because it's a model and theories are more contested than it was being done 5 decades or 2 decades before. And sampling methods itself, think about if you're taking a feminist approach and you are targeting women to respond to your question, how can I go for a random scientific sampling method? Because some women might feel that no, I won't participate with this research. So it always should be like snowball, and we need a lot of time to invest. Probably we need again and again to one person, and in that case we have to negotiate with the sampling, compromise with the sampling methods, even if it is not too scientific. We have to compromise with the sample size, because if we are thinking about qualitative methods, then probably we need more time for one single question to get the answer of it. So, and deeper understanding of gendered space needs scaling down, as gender is often constructed within the family and within community. And as I already said, it is too micro a scale for research within geography. So I end here, and I hope I am having a lot of questions or comments or whatever.
Some questions are there already in the chat box.
Yeah, so do you think that you can see and...
Yeah, I'll just read one of them.
Yeah, maybe
two questions are there. I'll
I'm
just read.
Trying. Yeah, I'm just opening the chat box and then see where are the questions.
Last two are questions only right now.
Yeah. Ma'am, few universities offer women's studies course. Yeah, but I'm not interested in women's studies course, because I'm more interested in how we can incorporate geography, women's studies within geography. We also have, I do teach a lot, one course on research methodology in women's studies. So women's studies, yes, that is there. But I always said that as I don't prefer this, I won't go for an optional course. And I won't think that women's studies one course for one university is good enough. Rather, I'm too ambitious. I think that we can bring in gender question more and more into the mainstream academic discipline. So if we can handle that, it would be more beneficial. Can you please mention some of the general qualitative methodologies for gender study in geography? These are all interdisciplinary methodologies. Yes, I would think that, first of all, like when I'm telling you from my own experience, because what I felt that when I knock at the door of somebody's house, and with a questionnaire, with a recording device, and with a lot of just a good researcher we try to do, then we cannot handle the gender question, because women are, in most cases, they are shy. They're not shy, actually. They're trained not to speak much about their own problem and to share that with outside people. So the problem is Govindan Kuti, actually Tanushree Pal has, she is asking, probably she wants to ask some question. Maybe once we finish this one, maybe we can give her opportunity to speak. If you can see the last comment, it's Tanushree, because Tanushree is a geographer and she is teaching in the women's studies in Vishwabharati University. So maybe yes. So before I address and I take the Tanushree's question, I would like to answer this methodological issues, that more we try to have more informal conversation, more open-ended questions, more participatory kind of research. Sometimes maybe we can take part in the everyday work of that family, and we can be observer, we can observe how things are working if we are permitted. And for that reason we have to develop a big rapport with the women. So that takes a lot of time. When you think about doing a research on gender issues, we need to invest a lot of time to develop the liaison with them. So that becomes a very, very significant factor for us. And there lies the problem that whether we have the time, and then the sample size that gets reduced, and sampling technique itself. So I can see there is separate department for women's studies. Yes, I have already answered that question. Why it is said that gender neutral policies are gender blind policies? No, it's a confusion actually. Gender neutral, we think where we are gender blind, we think we are gender neutral. So it's like, it's a contradictory term, and we have to be very careful that when we practice gender, we claim that we are gender neutral. Like in geography, we claim that we do not need to look into the gender question within resources, within transport, within many other sub branches. So that is actually a gender blind position. So that's very important. And I think this Deepika Singh is asking, please elaborate on the issue of gender specific impact of disasters, especially women, and role of women in the process of disaster risk reduction. It's again that these World Bank and other development agencies, they are targeting more women for disaster risk reduction. And I won't say that that is not important. That is also very, very important. But again, my question would be, why do we try to put all the responsibility? They are already overburdened to run their households, etc., etc. Why do we put extra pressure on them how to manage the disaster situation and risk reduction thing? Because more facilitation for infrastructure is more important, which is the decision for the government wherever they are. And they have to be efficient enough to understand that where we need the intervention of women. And yes, of course, because they are the direct, I won't say victim, but they have to confront the disaster in most cases from the field. And that is very, very significantly important. And that's why they're targeting, because women are they are more open to listen to the problems and how to mitigate. So that is probably the one of the way that we try to target these development agencies. They try to target women for disaster risk reduction. But unless and until you have a disaster center, flood center, you build a flood center, how can you train women to mitigate the risk of disaster? So unless and until we face the government and the state, they don't facilitate, then we cannot put the responsibility, okay, how to manage these things, because they already know how to manage, because it is from their own experience. And it's sometimes I feel that when we try to suggest them some kind of modalities how to reduce the risk, I think we are very outsider, and we are not in a position to advise them in that position. I think their personal experience, and then their experience and they are very much experienced, and they know how to handle it much better way. So I say, Shumitra Das, ma'am, what is your thought about gender inequality in case of faculties in higher education system and leadership position like VCs, principal and related position? Okay, Shumitra, so my answer would be that if we think that one woman, we had a long time, we had one woman prime minister in this country. Currently we have only one chief minister in Bengal who is a woman, and we had one president who was a woman, Pratibha Patil. And so similar is the question of one person cannot change the situation. We need a mass representation. One VC, one principal, one position will not change the system. We need more women in the field. We need more faculties in higher education. And I'm hoping that I was talking to Chinmay that probably we will look into how the faculty positions and how gender disaggregated data in higher education. I don't know that whether such kind of database already exists in UGC portal or somewhere, but maybe yes. So what I feel that we need more women enter into the higher education. But I would also like to tell you my experience, because when I was a student in masters in PG in 1990s, early 1990s, all the universities in West Bengal, they were full of women. We had 10:1 ratio of women and men in our department in my class. And now if you look into the faculty positions of all universities together in West Bengal, you will see where are these women going. In the class, we see them more, but when the recruitment of faculty, we don't see them much. So what I would argue that we need to bring in more and more women, not as a student, but as a faculty. So then collectively, we can make a better argument than from a very individual perspective. Anuradha has asked that thanks for, okay, we would be enlightened if you could share your thought on choice of research topic pertaining to gender perspective based on gender and gender of researcher. To be specific, why it is so typical of women to take up feminist research topic rather than men? Isn't a hindrance to being gender sensitive in academia? Actually, my answer would be yes or no. Because Anuradha, you know that it depends on what topic you are opting for in your own research. Because you know that if you are a woman researcher, your access to the women anywhere in any space would be more in comparison to men. That doesn't mean that men cannot handle gender question, because it would be very good if we see that more men researchers are coming up in future to take the, because it is already in a case, it is also a kind of stereotypical ideas that we are women, so that we talk about gender, and we do not we do not want men to look at the gender question. But I think these days many men are also being interested in looking at the gender question, and I hope that there would be more and more. But from a very practical perspective, if somebody, but it is always possible for men who are the insider researcher. If that particular fellow is coming from a particular community, even if he is a man, he might have a bigger access to that community. Even he can freely talk to other women in the field. And so we need more insider researcher, because if you are a completely outsider researcher and men, and you are going to understand the gender question, it would be a little difficult for a researcher, but I won't say that it is impossible. Yes, it is possible. We have to open enough. We have to be open enough to go for that, exploring that. And it is good. It will be always good for us that it's more. In fact, the thing is that what I am arguing today, I'm arguing to the men faculties in most cases, because in most cases we have majority of faculties in our geography departments of different universities, they are men. So I'm addressing them here. And probably I'm hopeful that yes, something will happen in future if we are open enough to accept. And I also think that methodology should be different. Yes, Shravanti, yes. And who is deciding the role of women in the field of academics, and who is deciding the physical appearance of our women? Who is deciding the role of women in the field of academics? I really don't get the question. No, it's not somebody is deciding. You know, it's the role of patriarchy which we need to understand, that somebody is not guiding us, or a particular person is not telling us what we should do and what the physical appearance of a woman should be, but it is more of a social construction and society in a bigger sense who tried, and patriarchy works a lot everywhere within academia, yes, of course, and they try to control these norms which are more or less fixed for them. And sometimes researchers interested in gender geography are not given right priority and asked to change the subject of research or neglected. Yes, it's again, I agree with Arathi, your question. Yes, if you are like, you know, if you are coming to a person who is a super, because finally it is a research, and research, there should be a supervisor involved, and if supervisor is not interested in gender question, then they will ask you to change the topic. But if you are competent enough, but then I won't say that it is a problem of the supervisor. It is a problem of you. You have to make him understand that, yes, sir, it is an important question and I'm delighted to look into it. So you please give me a chance. That can be my answer, but I'm not sure that I answered your question. Well, can you please explain how geomorphology is related to the gender? But geomorphology, yes, I already have told you that I don't think that pure geomorphology, we have something, even pure geomorphology, we usually exclude human from that field, which is not good, because we have a dualism in and very rooted, dualism is very rooted in geography. So sometimes we think physical and human, these are very different, but that is not. So I probably discuss the applied subject of it. And how can a first generation knowledge seeker handle the gender differentiation in practical life? Paushi, I am a first generation learner. So what else I can tell you? I am a first generation learner from my family. My mother completed primary education and my father secondary education. So I am the first generation learner. And you probably what we need, but for what reason I am really indebted to my parents, that is because of the fact that they always accommodated my wishes, my choices. So I was privileged that I did not have to face much challenges within the household, which rather my parents helped me to do whatever I wanted to do. So yeah, I think we need to be kind of, you know, there is a term called rebel. Rebel means you don't want to listen to. You can, you know, you can be labeled as like, you know, you are a very rough and tough, you are not very womanly in attitude, you are a harsh woman, you are a rude woman, kind of thing, which is my personal experience. But if you can do whatever you want to do, that's it. And we don't need to think about what other people think about you and what image they build in their head about you. So if you can ignore those, you can do anything in your life. That is my answer. So I think Govind and Kuti, may we ask Tanushree wanted to ask me something.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Am I audible, Bhupati? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a cranky voice, but I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. I don't have a question. I would just like to add two things.
Yeah.
Number one is the thing I myself, as you know, started from JMU, and Professor Saraswati Raju was teaching there at the point when I was studying. I did my master's MPhil. There was no mention of feminist geography, and later on I asked, she was my supervisor also. Later on I asked her that why, despite the fact that CSRD has you, why is it that gender geography, forget about feminist geography, like Kuntala often mentions that we are scared to use the term feminist geography. We tone it down a little and say gender geography. Why is it that gender geography is not included in our syllabus? So it was nowhere in the syllabus. In MPhil, as I opted for social geography, there we had a course on gender and development. But then again, MPhil is not, that course was not taken by the point that you have been trying to make all through your presentation, that not all students took up that course.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my second point of observation. That is very unfortunate that despite having Saraswati Raju in JNU, I don't know what it is like now, but you have shown in your table, I can see that there is not much improvement.
Yeah.
So that is one thing which brings me to the second point. I feel that, you have talked about all the different branches of geography where gender questions should be integrated. One area which is very, according to me, where gender questions need to be focused, first thing is the course on geographical thought. Because you mentioned that, like, through the hands of radical geography and critical geography, feminist geography came into. But even at the undergraduate level, I have always felt that at least there is something called feminist geography. There is a gender concern in geography. That should be, the students should be introduced into that so as to understand the epistemological implications of, as you said, that it is a philosophy. So we might as well incorporate it into the philosophy of geographical thought, which would, I think, I have often felt that in geography, a lot of research nowadays do talk about women, but that is more like, add woman and star kind of an approach. So you are looking at literacy, so you just disaggregate the data into male and female literacy rates, that becomes feminist geography. Or you are looking at some form of health outcomes or deprivation, caste, according to caste or tribe, you just disaggregate the data. So if we incorporate feminist thought in the course of geographical thought and help the students understand that there is an epistemological shift, that would help us to make them understand what is the difference between using a gender lens and just adding women, that's looking at, male female literacy rate or male female employment rate or male female mortality rate or whatever. So these are the two things I have always felt, and today I thought I wanted to share this thought and I want to seek your opinion on it. What do you think that, by incorporating this into geographical thought course, I think we will be able to actually, facilitate that gender lens that we are talking about. It is not only about disaggregating data into male-female literacy rates or male-female employment rates. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanushree, for these inputs. Really, I always find it easier to talk to you on these issues, and we always had conversation on this. So at the last moment, I sent the link to Tanushree and I asked Govindan Kutty that I must invite you to this course. And thank you very much. Yes, that is my question also. Why we are so afraid, like, you were saying that Saraswati Raju was there, and there is nothing like, that even in the philosophy of geography, there is nothing, no mention in JNU. And in fact, even Saraswati Raju was there, at least at one full course was there, 4, and now there is nothing, just Saraswati retired, so gender also retired. But the thing is, yes, the question is why we did not make that argument that feminist approach is something else rather than adding women and stuff. That's very different approach. And that's how the problem is, that I was touching upon, but I did not elaborate on this, because this epistemological question is also very, very significantly important, that how we build the knowledge. And the question, there lies a problem, as I just touched upon, probably feminist geography is written in the geographical thought or philosophy of geography of many universities, not JNU, but in many universities it is written. It is where it is written, it is under critical. There are a number of points like radical, etc., and then one is point is, and even feminist geography, and somewhere it is written geography of gender. But the question is, it is not the problem. Problem is if we don't understand the feminist perspective, so to say, rather than disaggregating data and gender. It is a completely different perspective, and the problem is that the geography is a subject which is highly biased towards understanding the data and disaggregating data. There is the problem. When we think about qualitative methodologies, then I was this time I was teaching a course on feminist epistemology, in women's studies of our university, and I was understanding that even there are enormous scope of blending narratives with data. It is also possible, but we never explore, because the problem is we see that as soon as we think about feminists, and as you know that feminism is part of our MPhil course also. In MPhil we teach feminism as such, and in philosophy we also teach feminist geography. But even if it is written as gender geography, I always teach feminist geography, and I try to make the differences. And the problem is that if we do hire that approach of research, then we have to open our methodological question. If we are not ready to open our methodological question, we are not open to invite interdisciplinary methodologies within geography. And then even if you have a very clear idea what to do with the feminist approach when you are looking at something, and if you are not allowed to hire those methods as purely geographic, there is a problem. I'm not sure why Saraswati didn't fight for it, but she could, I think. But I'm not sure that a CSRD already was having a problem of being with economists, hardcore social scientists, and they were not a full-fledged department. And why she didn't handle it, I am not sure about it, but probably she could. And probably if we have a chance to interact with her, probably we could ask her. Even as you said, I was thinking that why not I can take an interview of Saraswati, and probably we can raise this question. What about, what do you think?
That will be a good idea to do, because I have already asked this to her, and she
maybe I have to take a twisted path. I do not need to mention it at the beginning, but probably I will just send a proposal that I would take an interview, and then probably I put the question all of a sudden. So I don't know.
As you rightly pointed out, CSRD is dominated by statisticians and economists.
It's not even a full-fledged geography department, so CSRD is always having a problem, in JNU, geography in JNU especially. But the thing is, what I feel, even if you think about it, there is Anindita, there is Aparajita, there is Kiran, there are so many people in DU, and they're opting so many optionals. So why they have a big bunch of people who are in favor for feminist research, and why they are not making the argument to incorporate into the core course, So all of us, and there is my question is, why we do not claim, rather than claiming a periphery like optional, why don't we claim the core courses? So that's my agenda, and I will go on telling, and even if people, as I told you before, that one of my colleagues, he often define me as danger geographer, and it's don't think that it's a pure joke. It's a something that, okay, if you are bringing feminist agenda into the geography, then you are damaging geography. You are destroying geography. In fact, in most cases, if I encourage them to go for more qualitative methodologies to follow those, then, and I'm always afraid when some of my student is defending his or her PhD thesis, that probably it will be critic like, you have not paid much attention to the quantitative techniques or mapping techniques or whatever it is. So as long as
one more thing, I would like to just a funny story worry because somebody raised this question that even if someone wants to work on gender issues in geography, he or she is discouraged. In my PhD pre-submission, I was giving my presentation, and one of the professors sitting right in the front bench fell asleep through my presentation. He was sleeping.
Not just that. Sometimes it is considered, is this a topic to research? So
Yes,
that is
yes,
the kind
of
of
course.
attitude sometimes we
Yeah,
take.
that is a kind of attitude we have to. So it's really. But I was this time. I was so disappointed, Tanushree, when I was looking at the DU syllabus. Why so many people are there who are so good in and good in researching gender, and so many optional full 4 papers on gender geography in DU, and in the core course only feminist geography within the philosophy of geography, nothing
Maybe
else.
we can talk to Anindita also on this regard.
No. I'm not that much. I don't have that confidence that I can make an argument, but I'm sure, and if it is somebody, but I cannot really. And also what I would try to tell you, Tanushree, within the gender geographers itself, I have a very peripheral location. And all of my degrees from Bardhaman University, you at least have a degree from JNU. All of my degrees and my experience all the time, I have a very peripheral location like Bardhaman. So,
you no longer have a peripheral location because of your achievements and your work that speak for themselves.
I will always make my argument because I have nothing to lose. I have I have no expectations from anybody, so I can go straight. Just like somebody was telling how being a first generation in the knowledge domain, how you can make an argument. So I can tell you, Pausi, that it is my experience that if you are a first generation learner, if you are looking at the gender question, if you are a feminist in heart, and then you are going to be a rude and rough woman, not polite enough. And I'm like that. So that's my vantage point where I make the argument. Yeah.
No, maybe change will come, because what I am seeing is the Kerala departments and all, now more number of female faculties have started coming in. So it was all initially a male dominated one. So now maybe the committee, syllabus committees and all will have more women folk in that, and it will probably result.
But it's good if it happens. But Govindan Kuti, I just want to mention that, we are trained in a system. As a geographer, we are trained in a very patriarchal way of looking at things. And then even faculties, women faculties, they come, they have their baggage in their head that, okay, we have women studies, so why would we? Like the students are asking the same question. So they will go on asking the same question. And I think very few people dare to take the feminist stand within geography. It's my own experience that hopefully we always end with a hope that things will change in future.
Sometimes I have seen when subject committee meetings and all are done, when this topic comes in, so is it really required? That is the kind of thing that gets discussed. So probably maybe in future it will come, because there are lots of issues of current significance which is going on. So hopefully it will change.
Yeah, and I'm further hopeful that some of your students who are present here, and some of them will enter into the academia within geography, and definitely they will bring a change.
Hopefully, yes. No, for doing this seminar itself, I have been, my PG students, if you look into my PG class that I am tutoring, 90% of them are women, right? And I have been asking them to take over this entire webinar initiative. I'll just give you resource person, you organize it. So, very few come forward. So this is the hard reality.
Yeah, this is the hard reality, because we always silence them since their birth. We always told them, don't go forward, don't move, don't laugh, don't talk in a high pitch, don't do this, don't do that. So which I prefer to call that killing of agency. We are very proactive to kill their agency, and that's why they don't come up. But you see that when they are ready to take the challenges, they are doing much better.
Yeah, few students have been coming forward and they are doing it very, in fantastic manner. As of
Yeah.
now, that is what I have been seeing, and
Yeah.
they have the potential. I have seen them, do seminar presentations and all. They have very high potential, but thing is that not ready to come forward. So,
Yeah. Yeah, Pausi has already said that we are trained in that way from the childhood. Yes, I know this.
but I come from a matrilineal society where we give more importance to the female side.
Yeah, because I was in one refresher course from Hyderabad University. I was talking about gender, and some of the girls women were there from Kerala, and they were telling me that I didn't know about Kerala much. So they were telling that you have this matrilineal system of property rights, etc. So
Yeah,
that is something is adorable. So maybe yes, but let's see.
Really great to have you today, and no, it was a fantastic discussion that followed your presentation as such. That maybe we'll look forward to have more such interactions with you in future. As and when the time permits. I'll request one of my students, Nisha, to say a vote of thanks to you.
Okay, sir. Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, one and all. We have been listening to a very enlightening talk on gender blind to gender neutral and miles to go by Dr. Gaub Samanda. It's an honor and privilege to offer her vote of thanks, ma'am. Your presentation have given insight into the broadest aspects of gender blind to gender neutral and miles to go, and feminist geography and gender geography also. And I personally like that course, like. Gender is not a significant factor in the production of space and spatial activities. It's a good thing to apply in our current society. And I one more thing that I proudly say that and share with that. In recent data of our state, like government of Kerala, the women are at the forefront of government jobs. And I happy to share this. And there are also issues about gender equality. That is another thing that anyway. Thank you so much, ma'am, for wonderful section and detailing about the project you have been working on. Let me take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of the Department of Geography for sparing your time from a very busy schedule and introducing us this topic. Thank you, ma'am. Let me also extend my sincere thanks to all faculty members of the Department of Geography and all the students of Department of for having actively participating in the section. Thanks to all. And I extend sincere thanks to research scholars and project staff of the department and faculty members of other college professionals from various institutions for their participation and students. Thank you once again, one and all. Within this webinar cost to cross, all can now exit the section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'm writing series with Punjab Geographer, this journal of from Chandigarh. So I'm writing a series, popular series in that, and I'm hopeful that this I will develop as a popular paper, and not to make it heavier, with English jargon and references. No, I'm writing this series as popular in popular mode as much as possible, so that students can read, and hopefully that I will write this next in the next issue, and if I get it printed or published, I'll send you a copy which you can send out to your students.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, man. Thank you. That will be really nice. Please do share other papers. It will be very good to share this.
So I think I can leave now.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, bye everyone.